Okay. Now I want to transform 3 times the sine of 2t minus 1. Now, this one's a little bit tricky because we can transform cosine of something times t or sine times something times t, but we're not ready with the table to transform something of 2t minus a value. So to get it in the proper form to match our table, let's look at the trig identity that reduces this angle sum or difference into a product of sines and cosines. Yeah, we'll use capital A because we have little a over there. Capital A plus B equals sine A cosine B plus cosine A sine B. Okay, so if you have a sum of 2 angles, then you have the sine times cosine, and then the cosine times sine of the angles in the same order added together. And there's a similar trend identity for the cosine angle sum. So if we need that, we can look that up. So transformation of 3 sine of 2t minus 1. First, we pull a 3 out. And then we expand out this sine. That gives us a sine of 2t times cosine of a negative 1 plus cosine of 2t times sine of negative 1. Now, this cosine of a negative 1 is a constant. So I can pull that out and do a linear, move my L in to the functions, sine and cosine, pulling the cosine of negative 1 out first. Cosine of negative 1 times the transformation of sine of 2t plus sine of negative 1 times the transformation of cosine of 2t. Okay, and all that's multiplied by 3. Now, let's think about the symmetry of cosine sine. Cosine of negative 1 is the same as cosine of positive 1 because cosine is even. Cosine of negative theta and cosine theta are the same. Whereas sine is odd, so sine of negative 1 is a negative sine of 1. Now 1 in here is 1 radian, so we'll leave it. We don't. It's not a special angle, so we can't translate it a little. We can't write it down even any simpler. We'll just leave it as sine of 1 and cosine of 1. So we have a 3 cosine of 1 times the transformation of sine of 2t. Well, that has a b value of 2. So we get 2 over s squared plus 2 squared for the transformation of sine. And then we have a minus sine of 1 times a 3 times the transformation of cosine of 2t. Again, b equals 2. S over s squared plus 2 squared. And then we can combine this together. We have 6 cosine of 1 divided by s squared plus 4 minus 3 sine of 1 s divided by s squared plus 4. And there is our answer in the simplest form, which means that we can look at this transform version and be able to use the table to transform back. So let's see, at the bottom, we have a 6 cosine of 1 over sine squared plus 4. We look at that 4 and we say that 4 is really just 2 squared, which means I'm not going to look for, I'm going to pull a 2 out of my numerator. So pull that 2 out of the 6, it's going to be 3. And I have 3 cosine of 1 times a sine of 2t. On the other side, I have a multiple of s over s squared plus 4. So I know I'm looking with a cosine. And 4 gives me 2 squared. So b equals 2. And I have 3 sine of 1 as my coefficient. So I have minus 3 sine of 1 times cosine of 2t. Which is right there. Okay, so again, our steps right now will be simply to transform forward. And a little bit later, we'll look at the inverse, coming back. It's the same process it's used in the table, just going backwards.